that? Can you hear? Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. How y'all doing?
Before we go any farther, thanks to Steve Grimm, Steve Dagan. He got our system working.
I brought a few things with me here so I can kind of go over some new stuff. The catfishing's changed a lot in the past few years, but see, you were talking birds earlier, and you finally mentioned the cormorant. If you're concerned about your fish population, your cormorant's where you at, which right now the river especially is choked full of shad. But start with your cormorant. So if you're talking to your biologist, and believe me, I've worked with plenty of them and helping write legislation and stuff. Biologists typically are very set in their ways, and it takes a lot. It takes clubs like this to go in as a whole and to really push them and send them emails and write them letters and slash their tires if you got, no, I'm just kidding. You know, I mean, you gotta be persistent, you gotta stay on. As a catfisherman, I've been a catfish, I caught my first catfish on a rod and reel in 1976. I know I look around the room and I guess I'm kind of a young whippersnapper compared to some, I get that. But I've been deeply, I don't feel that way. Listen, I got a pacemaker. I rolled around in the woods my whole life, water my whole life, and I got bit by a brown recluse in a hotel room in Memphis, Tennessee. Shorted out my electrical system. They shocked me back to life 36 times. They took 2 pounds of flesh out of my right butt cheek, destroyed my bladder. I was 1/8 of a centimeter away from being castrated, and about a 1/2 inch away from it getting into my large intestine, which would have killed me. Nothing they could have done that. So, I'm 52 going on 82. Yeah. Everything I got today is because of God. God's blessed me a lot. You know, being a catfisherman, we don't get much attention. We really have to work hard to get everything we get. You know, I've got some national hunters, Cast King, and offshore tackle, and Boss Cat, Mad Cat's Rock. Really hard for catfishermen, you know, because catfishermen have always been looked on as a bunch of dumb fishermen sitting on a tailgate with a chew in their mouth, drinking a bush light around the campfire. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because for the most part, that's true. That's what we were. I was raised that way with my dad, and we, you know, when I was too small to walk across the creek, he carried me on his shoulder. We'd set some bank poles and throw lines, and we'd gather up wood, build a fire. We'd run our lines every couple hours all night, and seine for minnows with the big minnow seine, and you know, that's how I was raised, and it stuck with me. I slept under many a bridge. When Dad and Mom didn't want me to, well, Mom didn't want me to, Dad, he didn't really care. Back then, you didn't have to worry about the things you got to worry about now. But so I spent a lot of time. As I was growing up, I was fortunate enough, and I was featured in Field and Stream, In-FISHERMAN, Midwest Outdoors, did a bunch of television shows with Midwest Outdoors and Catfishing America, and I got YouTube channels, and I write for Catfish Now magazine, which you can find that on the internet. So I've been very, very blessed to be able to do things in a sport that's not really highly looked upon. However, I know, you know, that every time you catch a catfish, you're holding the most complicated, awesome fish made. I mean, their sense of smell is 130 times better than a largemouth bass. Their whole body is a tone. They can feel and sense things that none of the other fish feel for, can feel or sense. I know a lot of people with bass fishing, especially, you know, you like to use scents on your baits and stuff, which I'm just going to tell you that you're wasting all your money. Bass will never smell that. By the time they see that bait and it's gone, they'll never smell it. They have like 30 olfactory folds in their nose, where a catfish has 120. So just be careful, you know. But bass fishing, what they did well from right at the beginning was they marketed it really well. You know, and right from the beginning, they practiced catch and release, letting those fish go, and they showed the world that on TV. Hey, we care about our fish. We catch them, we take care of them, we get them back in the water. That's where catfish kind of lag behind, driving around on tailgates to a bait shop, taking pictures of them, nailing them to a tree and, you know, showing all their buddies. And that's where catfish kind of got left behind. Catfish was kind of the fish that everybody went out, caught. We had big fish fries, and it hasn't been until the last, 10 or 12 years, where it's become pretty much, all tournaments are pretty much exclusively catch and release now. Catfish has really come about. The boats being made specifically for catfish tournaments. Me and my wife, Michelle, we traveled all over the country. We fished tournaments from Pennsylvania to Alabama to Nebraska and Kansas. I don't know if you're in Nebraska, but you got to do a wrong turn every 1 mile to get anywhere in Nebraska. Which you wouldn't think that's true. But what's that?
There's a couple of cornhuskers back here.
Yes, sir. Go Hawkeyes. Actually, my favorite sport is, I was a wrestler, so Nebraska's got a great wrestling program, so we'll just go with that. I don't want you to come up here and whoop on me. It never fails anywhere you go. Like, you find somebody that, it slips out, a state or a college or something, and you always end up having some kind of a conversation with somebody about something off the subject. But anyway, I wanted to show you a few things. Back probably when a lot of you were kids, which has been 5, 6 years ago. I'm going to be careful. I almost it's been a while. It's been a while since I was a kid, but I wanted to show you some of the biggest advances in catfishing, and actually one of the most important advances over the last, which I know a lot of you know what this is. Right. This is an offshore tackle planer board. One of the biggest advances in catfishing probably has been the advent and the use of planer boards. I know there were, a lot of guys that are in the muskie and pike and walleye and even crappie nowadays, the smaller planer boards are, really utilize these a lot. Catfishermen, being able to spread out baits, control the depth of the baits, when you start fishing with a thermocline or anything like that. Planer boards, probably in the last 6 or 8 years, probably the biggest change in the world of catfishing. Being able to control our movement, location, speed, like out here on the Mississippi, for instance. Guys have trouble because they want to sit, a lot of guys who don't have boats, for instance, they want to sit on bank and they want to catfish. Well, what do? When you're on bank, you try to throw as far as you can. When you're in a boat, you're always fishing the bank, right? We all know how that works. So, right? So that's just the way it is. So with a planer board, what you can do is, now this one I'd use this from the Iowa side, right? I'd be facing this, no? The Illinois side. Yeah, Illinois side. And I'd get my bearings. So I'd use this from the Illinois side, so I can hook up my planer board. I can set my bait to depth, and I got current all the way across the river. So I can toss this out with my bait. I can just start letting line out, and I can run this 70 yards out into the river if I want to, and my bait will stay there. As opposed to trying to throw it 70 yards, and if you put 10 ounces of weight on it, it might stay out there, but you're going to start to gather stuff on your line, Mississippi especially, known for duck grass. You're going to start, and it's eventually going to move, which is okay that it moves a little bit, but if you really want it in one spot, as a bait fisherman, look, that's great, you can drag it behind the boat and spread out baits, we all know that, or most people know that. One of the biggest bank tools there is if you don't have a boat, planer board. So you've got, literally, if there's no barges or boats around, you can literally fish a planer board over on the Iowa bank from Illinois if you wanted to. You can put a tattle flag on it, put your flag up so you can see it. But what I like to do, because I target bridge pillars for big flathead catfish a lot, that's my main, I've been guiding for 20, 21 years now for flathead catfish. I like to run these bank or the boat, and I like to run them right up to bridge pillars. Flat, there's always a groove cut along bridge pillars, always. You can't keep a bait down, you can always anchor center mass, throw baits along it. Say you want to center yourself on these two pillars, and there's more pillars behind you, you can take your planer boards, and you can run them, let the current take them, and just come to rest right up against your bridge pillar. You can do that where there's ledges. Then you can be out in the middle of the river, you can run your bait over, and when your bait hits the ledge, your planer board will stop. And your bait will be on that ledge with your planer board. So, something that maybe not of you at all, maybe none of you had ever considered for catfishing, but best tool you can think of right here. So catfishing is all about tools anymore. You know, we got nicer rods now, we've got better line now, we have different kinds of sinkers for dragging, we've got long slinky weights so that we can drag and pull baits, you know, a half a mile an hour, 2 mile an hour, let them bounce your walleye and your bass and things along those lines a long time ago. OffshoreTackle.com on the internet. If you know anybody, you know, that likes to sit on the bank and bank fish for catfish just to get out, you know, this is like running a bobber. The only difference with this is, it's going to help you. You can put this exactly where you want it. This does all the work for you. I knocked my foot off. I didn't even screw this one together. So anyway, yeah, you can just put your line in the front. Put them down. I think most of you guys probably know. And then you have.
What's the cost?
They have several different sizes. It depends on the size. But most of them are anywhere from $20 to $50 in that range. So you can kind of, now they have a 38, for example. I didn't bring those because I'm talking catfish tonight. But they have an oar that's this long. You can switch the clip to either side, which makes it on some tackle, recognize a three-way swivel that now we have them that, you know, sinker hanging down, line coming off. The box is extremely rocky. You know, it's easy to get snagged. So you don't stay on your toes. What's that?
We're fly fishers.
You're fly fisherman. You should be on the Mississippi every day.
Hey, his nickname is Catfish.
Mine?
His, the guy in the white.
Your nickname's Catfish?
Yeah, don't ask me how I got it.
Well, now I'm tempted to ask you how you got it. They told me not to. But
It's an Andalusia thing, they give everybody nicknames when they cheat out.
I've been to Andalusia. You tell people that you're from there, huh? I was just, I don't know any of you, but
Pretty close.
I got you. I feel your pain. You know, then we got some of the biggest things are just, this is a ball and chain swivel. And the only reason I brought this to show you, because we've got several different variations of it that are floating around on the market now, but what they do is, I don't know, if you've fished enough for anything, you know line twist is a big problem. Especially if you're moving bait, whether it's a catfish. This whole thing with moving baits in the catfishing world is kind of a new thing. There's a new technique called bumping, and there's dragging, and there's drifting, and there's, you know, but catfishing was late to the party when it came to that kind of stuff. Catfish was always a Carolina rig, throw a bait out on the bottom, put your cobra hanging in, you know the story, right? Okay. So that was, and don't get me wrong, probably still the most popular method of fishing today is bottom fishing, Carolina style, slip sinker, leader to a hook, just like this right here. I had a guide trip just night before last. They caught a big fish was 41 pounds. We had a 21, and you know, all on Carolina rigs. Now sometimes I'll put a rattle. Rattles are great for flatheads. Catfish in general, they create vibration, noise, They're attracted to that. Sometimes we'll add a float to this, extend our leader, put a float down here by the hook. You got your sinker on the bottom, you got your float up here with your bait hanging. You can control that by length of your leader, 6, 10, 12, 15 inches off the bottom, however you want it. We have found that super effective. And a lot of you guys that started out fishing with bank poles, stuff like that, you know, you've been suspending baits your whole life on a bank pole, right? You hang them out there, you set them, and you set them 6, 8, 10, sometimes 4 or 5 feet off the bottom of a minnow or whatever, and that's how you fish. Rod and reel guys just never really dawned on people that, yeah, they call them bottom feeders, but a lot of us guys really aren't fishing on the bottom, we just didn't realize it. Yeah? Well, flatheads, like I said, are kind of my favorite thing. If you've ever caught a big flathead or any kind of flathead at all, you'll know that they're extremely powerful, extremely fun to catch. Yeah, I've been very blessed to catch many big ones. I've been blessed to, I've been guiding for 21 years. So I put hundreds and hundreds of people on big flatheads, and they all say the same thing, whether they're a musky guy or whether they're a northern guy or whatever. They can't believe the power, and it gets into your blood. There's a reason why you guys all belong to a fishing club, right? Fishing's in your blood. Some of you, it was walleye, like old catfish over there, or whatever, but that's really hard. That just doesn't sound right. Okay? That's all right. We'll work with it. Yeah,
It's from Andalusia.
Andalusia. I picked up the name Catmatt and a long time ago, because with the onset of Facebook and message boards and stuff like that, you had to have a nickname. So I had that. I started to type my name one day, and it kind of came up in the suggestions, so I went with it. And everybody has called me that now for almost 30 years, I guess. But I am not from Andalusia. Actually from Morrison, Illinois. I did a lot of my fishing was on the Rock River in my younger days, and we branched off, and we have been lucky. We have fished the Ohio River, the Missouri River, the Mississippi River, obviously, and all the tributaries in between, and Tennessee River, the Cumberland River, Kentucky Lake, and Cumberland Lake, and all over the country. But down south, and I want to kind of get into, because we were talking about birds. First off, does anybody have any questions yet? Some people forget it. Yes, sir.
Do you ever run into any trouble with the game boards when you got planer boards out because they think you're trolling? Because you can only have 3 poles? Or 2 poles, I mean? Well,
this is the thing. I'm glad you brought that up. Because the game wardens don't know how many poles you can have. That's the good thing. But I urge you to run 6 poles, 10 poles if you want to. I urge you to do that. They cannot write you a ticket, that's why.
If you don't have your name on it, they can.
That's right, I was getting to that.
Oh.
Okay, get yourself a little mailing label, okay? Get yourself a little mailing label, put that on your rod, cover up with some clear waterproof tape. And we've already dealt with this again this year. We deal with it almost every year, because every conservation officer comes in. And let me be clear with you first. I respect those guys and what they do, okay? But like some cops, a very small percentage of cops, some of them don't know their head from their ass, okay? So to be blunt, okay, that's just being true. In the state of Illinois, you can have 50 hooks in the water, okay? Now that's been a big gray area for a long time. And again, if you ask one, they can't tell you. Well, I have to make a phone call.
I just did today, I talked to him about it.
Yep. What did he say?
He said I can have 6 poles out there if I want.
Yep.
Because in Iowa, I bought, like $10, you get an extra pole.
Right.
So I was wondering if I was fishing on the river for catfish, can I, that 3rd pole, if I'm using my Iowa license, you can have all this.
Now, Iowa license can be a whole different ball of wax.
That's why I wanted the river, where
Right.
I wouldn't stand between the river.
Yeah, and that too. Now, they can pull that on you also. Well, you're on the Iowa side fishing, you gotta go by Iowa law. And that's another gray area. Well, if you put in on an Illinois ramp, or you're fishing on an Illinois license, I don't know if they're gonna pull out a tape measure, call the people at Tug Fest, what the hell we're gonna do to try and figure out what side of the river you're on.
Check the label on the fish, Iowa fish.
Well, you know, yeah, right. You catch a black and gold fish, you're on the Iowa side, and blue and orange one, okay, I don't. So anyway, as a catfisherman, I don't wanna run more than, say, 6 poles anyway. And most of the time, I'm fishing with somebody else, so we have 2 licenses. So I'm not advocating for people to run 50 hooks, because I'm a catch and release guy anyway. I want people to keep what they need, I want them to keep the right size, the right age, and I want them to let everything else go. You know, and I'm ice fisherman too. Can't stand seeing a mound full of 4-inch bluegill on the ice because they didn't want to put them back in their hole and dirty up the hole. That's just stupid. People act like our resources will never go away, and they will. So, you know, it can't be that way, but they don't know. So yeah, if you label your poles, your boat can look like a shrimp trawl, they can't do a thing about it.
That's right.
So, you know, and I've dealt with this, you know, I've said I've been in a lot of conferences, a lot of talks with DNR, and said God bless them, because they're trying to do their job and enforce the law the way they're written. And that's why most of them will tell you, we don't really know. If they try to give you, it's just a wise idea, literally, it takes you 2 minutes, take your mailing labels off, stick them to your rod, put a piece of security, and forget about it. You're good to go. So just do it. And then watch them get confused when they pull up to your boat. They have no, how many poles you got in the water? Doesn't matter. And then let them try to figure it out. Just watch. You might even want to get your phone out. When they start stumbling, it's hilarious when they start stumbling. Again, I'm not encouraging anybody to be smart ass or anything like that. DNR, I know they're trying to do a job. But it's unfortunate when the people that are trying to enforce the law don't know it. So I've told them, hey, if you only want people in the state of Illinois using 2 rods or 3 rods, go back in, rewrite this thing and make it clear. And then we'll follow it. That's all we're asking for. So, yeah, big mess there. Any other questions? Did I answer your question, or did I get off track? Because I do that a lot.
I don't know if you did or not, but you can only troll with 3 poles in Iowa.
Okay, there you go. All right, so yeah, if you're running an Illinois license, and you're trolling all over the Mississippi River, if you want to troll 6, I'd advise you to have an Illinois license.
No, you can only troll 2 in Illinois.
50 in Illinois.
Illinois, troll 2.
Who told you that?
Read your walleye rules, but.
Well, walleye, you're fishing for a restricted fish.
Yeah, but I was really going to convince him, if you got a night crawler on there, that you're fishing for walleyes and not for catfish.
He can't. Again,
That's the problem.
it's almost an unenforceable law. I don't know how it could stand up in court, to be honest with you. How does that stand up? I mean, if you fight that, he writes you a ticket, I don't know how that stands up. You go in front of a judge and say, and if you're under your limit, what's the problem anyway?
This guy told me you can only troll with 2 poles.
And that was a DNR guy?
Yeah.
Okay, I would challenge that. I don't think he's right.
Well, the guy stood right here and told everybody in this room that last year.
Did he? Okay, well,
For $10 more, you can buy another license and throw with 3 in Iowa.
I'm pretty sure he stood right here and lied to you, is what he probably did. I don't think that's correct. I think what they care about with walleye and smallmouth and stuff like that is your limits, your slot limits and all that. I mean, that's the way it should be. I don't care if you use 100 hooks to catch your 5-fish limit. If you're letting all the small ones and the big ones and the one you're supposed to let go and you're keeping the 5 that you can keep,
You draw that imaginary line in the channel. Aren't you supposed to respect the law of the state you're in? I had a good friend that used to commercial fish years ago.
Boy,
He
that's
watched in
stupid.
Iowa. He had to abide by the Iowa law,
Absolutely.
even with an Illinois commercial license.
right, and commercials, a whole different ball of wax.
But if you come out of the river with a sportsman's license on the Iowa side, don't you have to follow the Iowa law?
I would imagine, and you can't be fishing tributary, they're not allowed in tributaries with their nets and stuff like that.
That's correct.
Right. Yes, there is the whole imaginary line thing, which to me means,
It's in the channel.
right,
Yeah.
to me means prove I was doing it beyond a shadow of a doubt, an imaginary line. Again, I'm not saying go out, let's go out just to challenge their laws and see if we can piss them off. I'm just saying, they need to rewrite these laws and make them black.
So are you saying is it legal then to run a spider system for crappie like they do down south and all that?
Shouldn't be in Illinois. Not if you're right, they're
Say it
labeled.
is.
They're attended, you're attending your polls and they're marked, right?
No,
Now,
I'm just asking the question.
I don't want anybody to go out tomorrow with 27 rods fishing for crappie. Well, Catmatt said, he said, you guys are freaking idiots. He doesn't know, I'm just saying, sometimes we assume that they know what they're doing, and I believe they know what they're doing. I believe some of these laws are written in a way where they can't enforce them. They're fighting a losing battle.
Because these spider units, they fish like down south,
Yep.
are supposedly illegal.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I fish Kentucky Lake. I used to fish Kentucky Lake a lot. Is that your imaginary? It's not necessarily imaginary on that phone, because he's got the line right down the channel, right?
Yeah. We worked up, I was decided on my side.
And some of them will not even ask you what license you're fishing on. But that's where we had a big to-do, and we filmed the whole thing. And maybe I can post the link on your fishing page or send it to somebody so you can see it. They had a video on the whole thing. They pulled up on the boat, asked how many rods we're using, told them. They left to make a phone call. They couldn't get service. They left to make a phone call. They were gone for 20 minutes trying to determine if we were breaking the law or not. These are the people that are enforcing the law. They left for 20 minutes. They didn't know. They did say, they brought up the imaginary line. So it's a big stinky game that we're playing. And I don't want to be involved in that anyway. I'm just saying they have made it. It is something that they have trouble enforcing. We as fishermen can't understand it, because Joe Blow can go out tomorrow and put 50 hooks and tie 50 hooks off on a bank somewhere and never go back and check the damn lines, and the fish die on the lines, get eaten by turtles. And you want to bust me because I got 3 poles out there, I'm trying to catch me a trophy fish and release it? That's ridiculous. However, it's the world we live in. Yes, sir?
Well, that's the state of Illinois, we have politicians making the rules and not the people that know what it's all about.
Yeah, we don't have fishermen making laws for fishing.
Yeah, just officers that went in, because they don't know what to do, you're exactly right.
And you said it best, it's just Illinois.
No, I said, it ain't just that.
It ain't just Illinois. Yeah, there's a lot, in some of the other states, catfishing is not as big. And you go south, we lived in Kentucky for a couple of years, before we moved back. In Kentucky and Tennessee, you get down south there, big catfishing states, Up here in Illinois, they're kind of the more disrespected type fish, people are after the walleyes and stuff like that. But down south, it's a different story. They've already got creel limits, slot limits for catfish. Up here we have none. So I asked the DNR agent one day, I said, I asked him, I said, why can't we get a size and a creel limit for these fish? He said, what are we supposed to do? Some kid standing up at the dam catches a 50-pound flathead, his first fish, and he's supposed to let it go? And I said, absolutely. I said, why don't you teach that young man that fish, is going to lay about 150,000 eggs in the spring. It's the whole future of that species. Why don't you explain that to him and say, hey, you're doing yourself a favor, you're doing your kids and your grandkids a favor by letting that fish go. If you want to keep one, keep some smaller ones, I like to preach selective harvest.
Maybe it's a boy.
What's that?
Maybe it's a boy, not a female.
I never thought of that. I thought you were gonna get me with the pronoun stuff, and I was like, I'm leaving. That's it.
No way, it's a boy.
Yeah, okay. I understand what you're saying. Either way, it's an old mature fish. And some people, you know, and again, I don't criticize people.
My dad caught one down in Louisiana,
Uh-huh.
and they ate it.
Sure. And again, that's their right. So I don't get on people. I'm just saying, why can't we educate people and explain to them, you know, that
Me?
oh yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
How many pounds minimum is a breeder fish?
Well, that's a good question. You know, the average channel cat up here in the northern part of the country takes about, it takes about 6 years for a channel cat to get to about 15 inches. 6 years. I know a lot of people say, and those are fiddlers, right? A lot of people call them fiddlers. But those are the size you like to eat. You know, those 14, 15, 16, those are the kind of people like to eat. It takes a long time. You know, it takes a long time for, yes, sir.
Where's your best bait when you're out there fishing?
Well, me personally, if you'll see me out there, I am typically throwing 10 to 20 inch long live shad. The bigger the better. You know, a lot of people say you start using 20 inch baits and you're eliminating fish. You know, flatheads, although they're incredibly sensory perceptive fish, they're not all that bright when it comes to food. They're probably like what me and you would be like when we go over to Golden Corral. I'm just saying, the first plate goes down real good, and we just don't know when to stop. I mean, that's always been my problem. I don't know when to stop. Right? So, flatheads, I just posted a picture on my Facebook page the other night of a flathead I caught on a piece of cut bait that is the size of that, your phone. Size of his cell phone, and about that thick. A 2-pound flathead. And he found a way to get that in his mouth because he was hungry and he didn't want to, it was an easy meal right there in front of him, right? Because sometimes I throw cut baits, especially, this is spawn time for flatheads. And during the spawn, a lot of times they're tired, they're beat up, and a cut bait can be a lot more effective than a live bait. So, but yeah, and a flathead, there's studies done all over the country, and this is what our game biologists have come up with. Do they migrate? Yes. Do they migrate? No. That's what they've come. Flathead are very, and they're kind of thought of in the same breath as muskie. Okay, muskie, the fish of 10,000 casts. You got a flathead. Everybody's probably caught a flathead on accident, jigging something in a dam or in a hole or by a rock or something like that. But to catch big flathead consistently is incredibly hard to do. Incredibly hard to do. And when I say big, I mean, at least 20, 25 pounds and up. You catch them consistently is most people that have spent enough. Is that, somebody sneezed? Well, bless your little heart. I didn't see who it was. I thought somebody. All right, it's really hard to do. But flathead, they're maturing in at 3 years old. They're mature enough to take place. And so when we say we don't want to keep fish that are mature enough to spawn, well, that's damn near impossible. Whether you're fishing for bass or anything, it's almost impossible, right? You have something else?
Yeah, what is your best structure when you're fishing for flatheads?
Well,
What do you look for?
drop-offs, like with anything else, are a great place to start. The flatheads love rock and they love wood. And, on some pools of the Mississippi out here, let's take, say, pool 15, short pool here. It's all rock. There's very little wood in it. So I target mostly rock in that pool. Bridge pillars, which there's huge, and those bridge pillars on the 74 bridge are just amazing bridge pillars. I mean, them things are, I don't know how many tons them things are, how big I've never measured them, But outside of Kentucky Lake, I don't think I've ever seen bridge pillars bigger than these bridge pillars. They're massive. But bridge pillars are a great place to start. Rock walls, you know, any structure that's a pile of rock, one tree. Big flatheads tend to find them on one singular submerged piece of cover. You know, so again, they're loners. They don't tolerate, you know, it's not that they don't tolerate anything, it's just their mind is set on one thing. They procreate their species and they eat. So it's not like a big channel cat come in there and looks at him and says, hey, how you doing, buddy? He's either gonna run, he's gonna eat, he's gonna try to eat. We have found some amazing things. I mean, I reeled in a 23-pound flathead 7 or 8 years ago on the Rock River that had a 17-inch walleye sticking out, the tail was visibly sticking out of his mouth, and he still swallowed my big piece of cut bait. So now that's like, you know, that's like if you just ate your 20-ounce T-bone, and your wife catches you in there at the skillet, trying to gnaw another one down so she don't know that you made another one, right? They just, you know, and as the temperature rises naturally, being a cold-blooded animal, their metabolism goes up. They need to eat more. You know, when it cools down, and that's where our growth rates really come into effect up here with all of our fish, is that they don't get to feed consistently all year according to what their food source is. You know, so right now, you know, a lot of times I heard somebody saying 81, but I had 84.78. See, today is Thursday, Wednesday. Monday I had 84.78 degrees on 15. Now, when a fish is when it's that warm, them fish metabolism is through the roof. And if they slow these locks down and they slow these currents down to almost nothing, that's really hard on fish. And that's why catfish tend to survive and do so well in a lot of places where other fish don't, because they learn to adjust to that stuff. They have the capability to adjust to that stuff that a lot of other fish don't. And that's why catfish are so widespread and do so well. Any other questions?
What about fronts?
Cold fronts?
Yeah, cold fronts and separate types of fronts that come through.
Okay, my theory on fronts has always been this. I'm going to start this and tell you, I worked at Northwestern Steel and Wire and then Sterling Steel. So I worked 4 days on, 4 days off for 20 years. So when I got my 4 days off, I'd spend my first day bait fishing, the other 3 days guiding, then I'd go back to work at the mill. So this is what people always ask me. They always ask moon phase, cold front, warm front. And I always said, I got to find fish anyway. I don't have a choice to fish the fronts, the moon phase. These are the days I got available. I schedule my trips and I've got to find fish. So what I'm getting at in a roundabout way is, yes, there are peaks and valleys of feeding on fronts. Right before a front, you definitely sometimes will see a pickup in the bite shortly after the front, and then after the front sets in, you'll see a dip. Second day of a cold front, I've caught more big fish than any other day ever, which cold front comes in on Monday, Tuesday sucks, Wednesday you better be in your boat.
Okay.
And I'll call them little bubble fronts. Say we have a 82, 82, 82, 90, 80. That day there, that day's really good too, if you can stand it. Now, I have a pacemaker, I'm taking 14 pills a day. Can't fish in the sunlight all day anymore. So I've started to fish more in the evening and night and early morning. However, those, I call them little bubble fronts. It's not really a warm front, it's just a warmer day than, you know, for whatever reason. Those have always been really good for me. But on a cold front, the cold front rolls in on Monday, I want to be fishing Wednesday. That's always been really good for me for flathead catfish, for big flathead. I can't attest to a lot of the other fish out there because I said I don't fish for them. I fish a lot of bluegill and a lot of crappie, but it was always bait. So it was more about catching them than targeting big ones or anything like that. So that's why.
Okay. The other thing I was going to ask about is in night fishing to day fishing, do you fish closer to the bank or do you let the center of the river?
That's a good question too. You're full of good questions. You must not be from Andalusia. You're not from Andalusia. Because you got your stuff together, that's why. They call walleye fishermen cat fishermen in Andalusia. I mean, okay, now that I made a joke of all that, what was your question, David?
On the center of the river during
Oh,
the
gotcha.
time of the day or nighttime fishing, et cetera, et
Gotcha,
cetera.
okay. Center of river to bank of river means absolutely nothing, ever, anytime.
Okay.
It's the drop-offs, the structure, the channel ledges, the bridge pillars, that's what matters. You get out on the Mississippi or the Rock River and start driving side to side, and there's areas where you've got 20 foot of water by the bank and 2 foot of water by the bank. And there's areas where the center is 12 feet deep and 30 foot deep. So that makes no, but I know what you're getting at. I believe, you're getting at, do they move shallower at night as opposed to deep during the day?
Do they feed along the shore is what I was getting at.
Yes, and no. There's not really a wrong answer to that, okay, because the reason I love to target flathead more during the day is because I know exactly where they are.
Oh, okay.
If I'm going over and I've got my depth finder on, which I don't run I run Garmin, I love Garmin, I think Garmin gives you the best images. I go over these and I see one big tree down there in 17 foot of water. That's definitely something I'm gonna fish. Every day I'm on the river, that's what I'm looking for. I see a big rocky shelf drops off, big pile of rocks. Daytime, for sure. However, you can fish those. There is no sign, no DNR law, no nothing that says that tree is better at night. You cannot fish it during the day. That's the great thing about fishing. I think that's what we all love about it, is there isn't any real wrong answers. There's just different techniques and different expectations and things like that. I mean, hell, if your whole basis of fishing is worried about being better than catfish over here, then you're in it for the wrong reasons anyway, right? So, but yeah, that's a tricky question when you go from day to night or shallow to deep. Fish can always be caught shallow. I mean, and shallow is different to everybody or different to every body of water, right? So where 6 foot of water with a great big rock on it on the Mississippi River, 10 feet off bank, that would be considered fairly shallow, right? However, on the rock, that's fairly deep on the rock. So it's kind of relevant to the body of water you're fishing as to what you consider deep and shallow. The best thing I know about fishing is you just gotta fish. And that's what I always said to guide clients when it came to, they'd ask me, hey, what's the moon phase gonna be like? Do we need to fish at night? I just told you we were gonna fish from 7 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. I would not have told you that if I didn't think we could catch fish from 7 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, because I'm not about your couple $100. I'm about you wanting to catch fish and learn something. So it all comes down to, just fishing. And ledges, which is something else that's really good. And fishing them from the Mississippi River, from the bank, can be tough, right? Because a lot of these ledges have a lot of rocks on them. So if you can get your line out there over that ledge from 5 foot that drops down to 22 foot and then flattens out, well, getting that line back up that ledge can be real tough. I always tell people, I make casts sometimes for flatheads, and before I make the cast, I say, the only way we're getting that rig back is if it's got a fish on it. Because you throw it into something that you know it's gonna get hooked up. And the only way you're pulling it out of there is if that hook is in a fish's mouth. And then right? You get a big pissed off 55-pound flathead in a rock pile or brush pile, it's just not intimidating, you know what I mean? So you're kind of, that's part of the fun and the gamble and the risk and everything you take when you fish for them. Same with walleye or anything else. I mean, they got teeth and they're spend a lot of time in rocky type stuff, right? I mean, I'm not a walleye expert, but the same with anything. I mean, you're using lighter line, so you've got to be very finesse kind of type fishing. And believe it or not, catfishing there's a lot of finesse involved in catfishing as well. It's not just a broomstick sized pole and 80-pound braid and go for it. There's a lot. I run 30-pound mile for everything up here.
What do you use for leader?
Same thing, 30 pound.
30 pounds.
I use 30 for everything because I want the same weight throughout. I want to know what I got. I don't want one thing to be stronger than the other. I know, what are you doing?
I'm waiting for you to get done talking so I can ask a question.
Oh, okay. She was freaking me out. I didn't know if she, what was I saying? Or you so rudely interrupted me? Well, 30 pounds. Yep, 30 pounds. A lot of people are into braid, and braid is, cuts really easy on rock. I'm not a big braid guy. Feel is not a real huge thing in catfishing. I mean, catfish, they hit with a lot of force, even when they're light biting, so I don't need the braid to be able to feel. I can feel with the model, and having stretch and abrasion resistance is super, super important when you're fighting big fish and setting hook on fish, when you know it's rubbing up against a rock or a tree and possibly a zebra mussel and whatever else is down there, because there's a lot of stuff in the Mississippi River, stuff we probably don't want to know about. But, yes, sir. Absolutely. A wing dam, a direct drop like a wing dam is basically a great piece of cover, right? And if you've trolled wing dams or jigged wing dams, you'll catch moon eye. You'll catch a lot of bait fish down there, right? And I don't mean to disrespect anybody's fish of preference by calling them bait fish, but to flatheads, smallmouth, well, they are bait fish. So, it's a great place to target them. And when they're real aggressive, the cup in front of the wing dam will be really, really good, especially if there's a rock in there. Flatheads like to ambush. Channel cats will chase and destroy. You go down south, blue cats chase, destroy. Flatheads they're capable, but they don't want to. They want to hide, they want to blend in, and they want something to get too close to them, and then they want to, you don't notice a lot of flathead bites. I tell you, at 60-pound fish, sometimes you don't even see them bite. Everybody has this image of a flathead grabbing a 15-inch bait and that doesn't happen very often. Most of the time they get close to it, just like a bass will do with a live bait, pull water through its gills, they can suck that bait in from 15 inches away, and all you'll see on your pole is that. And if you've been flathead fishing long enough, you'll know right away that stuff's about to get real. You pick that pole up, and the next thing you know, it's pump. Well, flatheads are head swimmers, where a lot of other fish swim with their tail this way. Flatheads move this way, right? So that is that pump, stop, go, that you get with a bait when a flathead moves off of it. And some days, they inhale that bait, and they don't go anywhere. That's why I get to my next big point. If you're going to flathead fish, use a J-style hook. Certain hooks are kind of rendered ineffective in a lot of situations where flatheads just inhale a bait and don't move. Certain hooks need that fish to turn and move off the hook, And if you don't have, if you have a circle hook, you're just going to get that bait off, and eventually, and no such luck for you. But yes, sir.
You ever do scallops for catfish?
Scallops?
I don't mind buying balls out like that before. He has as well.
I have not, but it never fails. Down south, the big thing down there, and I always thought it was just a rumor. Down south, it's strawberry chicken, strawberry jello chicken. They'll cut up the chicken breast, they put it in a bag, they'll dump a pack of strawberry Kool-Aid on it, they'll shake it up, let it soak, turns it red. And I got down to Kentucky, and these old timers started telling me that, and I go home at night, my wife would say, these idiots. You are not going to believe what these idiots down here do. I mean, they waste perfectly good Kool-Aid.
Hey, them old boys been doing that a long time.
And it
let me tell you.
catches fish.
So one day, I had no choice, because I have doing what I do and just being one of the people that I want to know as much as I can about. I just want to know. I did it, and it is probably outside of GNS cheese bait. It's probably, as far as just catching fish, it's probably the best just catching fish bait I've ever used. And in the South. Now, I tried it up here to some success, but It doesn't work near as good up here as it does in the south. In the south, that fish get to biting so good on that stuff, you're waiting for that big fat pitcher to come busting, hey, Kool-Aid, that big guy from the commercial. You almost have to hide behind a tree to bait your pole so they don't, I mean, it's that good. And so when you say scallops, you know, a lot of people use shrimp. I know a lot of people go over here to the big, you don't buy that cheap bait shrimp stuff that you buy in a bait shop. You go over and buy the vein-in shrimp. The vein-in makes all the difference. For whatever reason, that extra smell, I have a guy down, a friend of mine from Mississippi, if he's watching, he calls it smell good. You don't have smell good on there. Now, so you're fishing channel cats, you go over there, you can buy like a 4-pound block for 20-some bucks. Now, they swear by the vein-in shrimp. And I know people catch them on hot dogs, and they catch them on this, and they catch them on that. And obviously, if he catches them on scallops, I have no reason to doubt that at all. Catfish are channel cats, especially very opportunistic fish. If they're not having a lot of luck finding shiners or shad or something, and something like that's in front of their face that they ain't got to work for, I believe it. But man, scallops are expensive. I mean, that's spending some money now to catch some catfish. But you know, yeah, the bullheads, yeah, they're good bait for flatheads, yes sir. Yes sir. I use Cast King. Cast King makes braid and mono. They also make a lot of good reels and a lot of stuff, but their mono, for years and years and years and years, all I used was Cajun Red, Zebco. And I swear to this day, that stuff got to be made out of steel. That stuff, I mean, I wouldn't be afraid to tie my dog up overnight with you know, this stuff is the Cast King's line is every bit as strong. Now with advancements now, the Cast King line, the only advantage it has over the Cajun Red is they've learned them. It's a little bit softer, a little more knot friendly and stuff. So I used Cajun Red for years now, it's Cast King, but I got a 70-pound dog. I'd tie him up with that stuff and I don't think it won't work. But
What's your biggest fish?
that's great question. And I'm going to show you, you know, and you probably use this rod a lot. But I'll show you, these are the hooks I use. Okay, a lot of you probably know the no-knot snell, but you know, obviously the snell knot is a great knot for any kind of fish you're fishing for. There's no knot in it, so you get no resistance, you get no friction on it. It just tightens itself the more the fish pulls away. You know, and you simply hold the hook towards you, for those of you that don't know. Take your tag line in through the front, and you just grab that tag line. Then you're going to wrap the shank of your hook. Don't overlap it. Just make a nice little, I go 10, 11 times, okay? And I put my finger on that just to keep them wraps from spreading out. And you grab the other end of your line, and you go from back to front, and you're done. That's it. I've caught every big flathead, every big fish I've caught on that knot right there, and it's not even a knot, it's simple to tie. You know, when I get in my boat, I get my poles out, and the first thing I do is I sit down, I pull my spool out, and I tie up about 6 or 7 leaders, because I know I'm going to break off. I'm catfishing. And I sit them over there on the edge of the boat, and they're ready to go, and that's it. I try to stay ahead of the game a little bit. Yeah, you can clip that off. Yeah, you can clip that off. Catfish are not line shy. Sometimes I clip it. I mean, yeah.
A gentleman back here wants to know your biggest fish, and one of your viewers wants to know, can you listen to loud music without it negatively affecting flatheads in skinny water?
That's a great, I love getting those questions. So now, what did you want to know first?
Your biggest fish.
Okay, my biggest fish up here is 77.01 flathead. When I caught it, it was the number 2 flathead on rod and reel in the state. It's now number 3. That was caught on the Rock River, actually. My biggest fish last year was 59. I do believe the state record is here, and as long as God allows me to keep fishing, I'm going to keep trying. But I think one of these years you'll see somebody catch a state record in one of these pools up here, which is now like 81 or 82 pounds. So I think there's some around here. You know, there's fish size of Volkswagens at the dam, right? So, and what was the other question?
Can you listen to loud music without it negatively affecting flatheads in skinny water?
Yeah, and that's another thing. People say, well, if the fish is so sensory percept, they can hear everything that's going on, right? I mean, you want to be quiet. I am a lot of things. Quiet is not one of them. I am loud by nature. I can't help it. I do everything loud. Flirt, talk, breathe, everything loud. All right, that's just me. You know, so listen, do they hear you when you drop sinkers in your boat? Absolutely. Listen, I had a guide trip the other night and we caught a 11-pound channel cat, a 21-pound flathead, and a 41-pound flathead, and we fished right where they had been working and chipping those bridge pillars away by the 74 bridge all day. Okay? So my next thing that I like to bring up when people ask that question is, you see them big groups of people, right? Swimming down the river, pulling their rafts, drinking beer, sticking their hands in holes, pulling them fish out, right? Now, if noise affected them, would they be able to do that? When I was a young kid, our favorite method of fishing, we got out of school, we went over to the lower dam in Rock Falls, we waded out to the middle of the river with a can of chicken livers tied around our neck, and we fished right behind us in the river, and we caught channel cats till we got tired. Mom and Dad said the street lights are on, it's time to go home. No. Should you? I don't know. I don't, but I don't think it makes much of a difference. The evidence I, to support it one way or the other tells me that it's kind of hard to scare a catfish off. That might be different with other species, I don't know. Yes, sir.
I noticed the sinker you're using.
Yes, sir.
I finally started using them quite a few years ago, and they're the best sinker in the market.
Yeah, the no rolls?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
They don't, everybody wants to use the round sinkers, you know.
They just roll.
You throw that below a dam, this out here is gonna see it.
You know, and that's been one of my most effective methods of catching big flatheads with those no rolls, is you get your poles behind your boat, and on both sides, you throw one as far to the side as you can. And that no roll will allow that bait to just kind of slide a little, then it'll stop. Then maybe it'll work down through and stop. And that's basically trolling your bait, right? And it'll work, it'll hold up, it'll catch on a rock, come loose. I love them.
I got a kick out of you guys talking about rods. Now, I got a lot of catfish in the rockers.
Yeah.
If the fish are hitting, you can't keep them.
No.
And I fish when I fish by myself with 4 rods on the bank. And I hook the same. There's days you can't keep 1 rod going,
No.
let alone 4.
We would always start with a couple of pieces, me and my wife, for channel catfishing, with hoping that before long we could just fish 1 apiece. Some days, like you said, you get to that point where it's just too much trouble to try and launch 2 or 3, But one of the, I said, when I was talking about how light flatheads bite,
Watch the fan.
yep. See how sensitive the tip of this rod is? That's a Mad Cat's, this is a Mad Cat's medium. You have to have that because the flatheads have the way that initial bite. Again, some of them do grab it and double it over, some of them don't. And being able to see, when you get a shad for a live bait, a big shad, this is what your pole does. He never stops. Shad, just, it never stops. A lot of people think you can't keep them alive. Best live bait there is. So he just does this, never stops. Then all of a sudden this happens. He stops. Okay, I know one thing's that he's either gotten tired or he just got swallowed. So I'm waiting for this to start again, or I'm waiting for this. And when I get 2 inches of movement like that, I know that's a flathead 99 times out of 100. And then the next move is just like this, and by that time I've already got the rod in my hand. I let him pump me down to the water, I set the hook. But
What about sinker slides?
sinker slides? Yeah, I think they did bring sinker slides in. Y'all know what a sinker slide is? I'm sure some of you do and some of you don't. There's a lot of people that sell that stuff nowadays. I don't know if they got a sinker slide in here now. I don't use a ton of sinker slides, but for those of you that don't know what they are, it's just a plastic piece that you put on your line and it'll slide up and down your line, and it's got a clip hanging from it. So any sinker you have with a golden eye on it, you can change out your weight real quick. If you're fishing 2 ounces and it's not enough and you need 4, you just unclip it, take the 2 off, clip it. It's basically a convenience thing. They were real popular. People are still using them pretty good now, but I don't use a lot of them. I'm kind of old school. I still fish almost the same way I did 15 years ago. Just like bumping, which has become big. People are letting out 100 yards of line or more behind their boat, lifting and dropping, and they're using their trolling motor to slow their boat to about half the speed of the current, and just giving the bait that natural appearance that it's floating down the river bed. And they're just, they get it float, bumps it right into a fish's mouth, and they eat it, and, so one of the new things.
How do you go through your shad?
Right through, I like to go thin and as far back as I can. And you gotta remember, you're trying to cast it, so like a 17, 18 inch, 19 inch shad, I'm gonna have to go a little bit thicker to make sure that when I throw him, I don't throw him off. On a smaller one I can go, but you never wanna get below the spine. And especially hit the spine. Hit the spine and they're paralyzed and they don't move anyway. But I like to, as thin as I can and far back as I can. Same with bluegill, carp.
Make sure no scales are on your hook.
And that's what my wife said, sweeping your hook for a scale. Scaly baits, anytime you run a hook through, it almost never fails if you've got a scale right on the tip of your hook. And that scale will keep you from setting that hook. So always make sure you have a clean hook tip. But yeah, that's a big point. Anything else? I've been given it's time to wrap it up and head to Andalusia for beer. Yes, sir.
Keeping flathead, what's your ideal size you say you keep flathead?
Well, that's a hard question for me to ask, because I like flatheads more than I like people. And that's just.
And he ain't lying.
And I'm not lying.
He ain't lying.
And they are good to eat.
He kisses
And for
every
years I would go
flathead
to
he catches.
Schaefer's, and
He
I
does.
would just call them and say, hey, I want 4 pounds of fillet, and I would go get them. Because it's hard for me to kill one. They have been good to me, and it's hard. But yeah, I would definitely say 5 to 10 pounds or underneath would be great. There's enough meat on a flathead like that to satisfy somebody. And like I said, they weigh eggs according to pounds of body weight. So naturally, the larger that fish and the heavier it gets, the more pounds of egg it lays. So I try to keep them 10 pounds or under. Yes, they are. Yes, sir.
You was talking about that, I was lucky enough several years ago, the flatheads don't spawn until they're 9 years old.
Who told you that?
This biologist down at Fairport, where I think, and I was also lucky enough, we put 50 radio transmitters and 50 flatheads and followed them around the river for a year.
Did you get to do that?
Yes, I
I've
did.
got to do that several times.
Yeah, that's a real eye-opener. But you was talking about traveling, we had one that we put a radio in the rock river, and that fish spent the summers below the dam at Burlington Island. And that October, that flathead was in that same brush pile. 96 river miles that catfish went.
Yeah, there's been some in the Missouri River that moved to 120 or 100, and then they've also put them on some that moved a mile their whole life.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, do they migrate? No. Do they migrate? Yes. They both do. I can tell you for a fact, he's crazy when he says they gotta be 9 years old to reproduce. I've seen that happen I've seen it happen in tanks and barns. I've seen them lay at 3 or 4 years old, with biologists, so I know that's not right. Now, he could have tagged one that didn't reproduce till it was 9.
Well, this club was in on part of that study when we caught all them flatheads years ago and he cut that bone out of them,
The otolith?
whatever they.
Yeah, the otolith is the ear bone, that's how they age them.
But Dan Salid, when we got the
That's the problem. Dan told you that probably.
No, Dan's
Okay.
okay. Tried to get your limit where you can only keep one flathead.
Good. Great. That's awesome. It never happened, and we wrote, what's the lady up here, state representative?
Tony McComey.
Yeah. Yes, we wrote, she's been trying for the last several years, working on that. So far, it's fallen on deaf ears, but, we're trying, we don't have an organization yet like the Smallmouth Alliance and the, you know, and, Catfisherman.
Well, you ain't got the fishery guys that were interested in catfish like.
Right.
Steve was.
Yeah, yeah.
And when we were shocking them fish, we shocked two, our scale went to 80 pounds. We shocked two that pegged our scale, and we shocked one that we couldn't get his head in the dip tank.
That's what I say,
There's
there's-
over 100 pounds,
There's record fish up here.
and that was in the Andalusia Islands.
Get him, Catfish.
All right, move on, so.
Well, anyway, thank you all for your time. I know catfishing can be kind of boring to some people. I'd love to come back.